Strange visit at 2 a.m. Me, my brother, and disabled mom all live together in a trailer about 30 minutes from Nashville, Tennessee. I'm 32 and my brother is 28. I was wary of moving there at first because of the stereotypes you may hear about trailer parks. But luckily, we've had zero issues in the 10 years we've been there. The neighbors are very nice, yards are well kept. So, about a week ago, we were finally putting up our Christmas tree, probably drinking too much beer and listening to Christmas music. Just Christmas spirit in full swing. During our random banter, my brother says, "Oh yeah, I can't believe I forgot to tell you. Earlier today at work, the owner had to kick out some guy who was acting super creepy." My brother works as a stalker at a little family-owned market about a mile from our home. He went on to tell me this younger-looking guy was pacing the aisles, sometimes standing still for minutes at a time, and not responding when the owner would ask if he needed help finding something. After about 20 minutes of this, the owner asked him to leave because he was scaring the customers. Without a word, he left. We continue with our good time, hanging ornaments, drinking, and we get our mom involved with us decorating. It's getting late, so we wrap up at around 10:30 to help our mom get to bed. She's in a wheelchair. We decide we might as well finish off the beer we have left and admire our decked out tree. About an hour later, we decide to go out on the front porch to share a cigarette as we usually do when we've got a good buzz. My brother opens the door and almost immediately closes it. I ask what's up, and he says, "Holy shit, the guy I was just telling you about walked down the street past our house, just like Michael Myers." I thought that was pretty strange, but wasn't super concerned. We waited for a few minutes, then went and smoked as usual and went back inside. My brother and I aren't troublemakers or anything like that, but I'm pretty confident in our ability to defend ourselves if we had to. These are just thoughts in the back of my mind though. After all, I hadn't even seen the guy. Fast forward to about 2 a.m. We're more than drunk enough to go ahead and call it a night after one more cig. My brother opens the door, and within seconds, I hear him say, Whoa, hey man, you good? Hey, buddy, what's up? You good?" I'm in the kitchen at the time, but quickly decided this doesn't sound right and rush over to the door. What I see when I get to the open door is a younger man standing on our deck about 3 feet from our front door. He's pretty tall, about 6'4", and another thing I noticed is he looks a lot like Adam Driver, which was a detail my brother jokingly mentioned earlier during tree time. So I'm realizing for the first time, this must be the guy he's been talking about. One thing my brother must have not gotten close enough at work to notice was this guy's eyes. I'm not exaggerating when I say I have never seen anything like it. His body language wasn't super menacing, but his eyes were the strangest combination of wide-eyed bewilderment and fury. Like us opening our front door confused him and also made him very, very angry. I joined my brother in explaining to him that it's late and he should head home. After what I'd say was about 30 seconds of staring, he just walked off without a word. I peeked out of our blinds to make sure he really left and saw nothing. We both tried to laugh it off and were saying things like, "Well, that was pretty weird, huh?" But it took a while for my adrenaline to taper off. The thing I kept thinking to myself that bothered me was those 30 seconds felt like he was the one deciding what the next move would be. But what that could have been, I have no idea. I also didn't love that my brother said when he opened the door, he was already standing there. So, for how long? We calmed down watching YouTube videos, and after another 30 minutes or so, I say to my brother, "Alright man, let's just go to bed. I'll take one more look outside to be safe." But I felt like it wasn't really necessary. I open the door and he's back again. The streetlights are spaced very far apart in our trailer park, but at the edge of our driveway, there I see his silhouette, probably 50 feet away, just staring at our front door. He's not there texting or on the phone talking with someone. He's just there. I feel bad in hindsight because I'm sure this poor guy definitely has mental health issues. But between being drunk and exhausted, and the look he gave us earlier. I was over it. I finally put some bass in my voice and said, "Hey man, you can't just stand in our driveway. You're creepy. Just leave. I really don't want to have to call the cops on you, so don't make me." This seemed to work. His demeanor didn't change at all, but the word cops seemed to do the trick. He turned around and walked away. I hope we handled it well. However, I still can't shake the feeling of that night. He didn't leave our porch until I showed up to the door, essentially making him outnumbered, and even then, he still came back after. I hope he's okay out there. We haven't seen him since. But I also hope not calling the police wasn't a bad choice, and that he isn't out there with bad intentions on somebody else's front deck at 2 a.m. who lives alone or is elderly or whatever. A stranger tries to steal my dog. This happened before Christmas 2019 when I was 26, and it still sticks with me to this day. I've thought about sharing this story many times, but I was never sure if it was scary enough. I guess you decide. My then boyfriend, now husband, and I decided to meet for dinner at a Christmas market here in Switzerland. He would pick up our dog from doggy daycare, and I would get there after work. We had our dog for about a year. His name is Bean. He's a medium-sized dog, and before he came to Switzerland, he was a street dog in Italy. He was about 2.5 years old at that time, and he loved and still loves to get all the attention he can get. Christmas markets are incredibly busy here, especially after work. People will meet with friends there to eat dinner and drink mulled wine. When we got to this Christmas market, we realized that it was way too busy to walk through with a dog, and I sent my boyfriend off to get my favorite street food, malawa. I waited at the edge of the market with Bean. Bean likes to greet everyone who looks at him, and I had gotten used to talking with strangers because my dog wanted to meet them, so I wasn't too concerned at first when a dude came up to me. Full transparency. I don't remember word for word what was said. I'm not even sure what language this happened in. I do remember that Bean happily greeted this guy, trying to stand up against him and licking his hands. The guy asked for his name and what breed he is, and I told him that Bean is a pinscher mix. That's when the situation started to turn. The man insisted that he must be a Basenji. How could I say he's a pinscher? All of a sudden he switched. There's no better word to explain it. He grabbed Bean's leash and said, "I'll go now, and just try to walk off with my dog." Thankfully, I had a firm grip on his leash. He got angrier and angrier with every second that I didn't let go. I loudly told him to leave me alone, and Bean started to bark at the man. I've never seen Bean this angry and scared at the same time. Thankfully, the man let go of the leash and slipped into the crowd. I was left standing there, a dumbfounded mess with a mess of a dog. Bean was barking and shaking, so I kneeled down to calm him, holding him and talking to him. My boyfriend was still somewhere in the crowd, waiting for our food. After a while, a woman walked up to me and told me not to put my heels to the floor, as she'd just seen somebody put a firecracker there, those little tiny bangers that you throw on the ground. They put it there so when I would stand up, I would step on it and it would make the boom sound. Was it the same guy that tried to steal Bean, or was it someone else who saw a distressed dog and thought, wow, let's scare that dog a bit more? I think the worst feeling for me was that apart from that woman who warned me, no one helped me when that weird guy was bothering me, even though I loudly told him to go away, and there were other people standing very close, just watching. Bean was the one who scared off the guy in the end. Thankfully, the events of that evening had no lasting impact on Bean, and he still loves to greet strangers. I skipped detention and maybe it saved my life. So when I was in high school, I wasn't a very hardworking student. I wasn't a troublemaker, but I was an incredibly lazy girl, working just the minimum so that my parents wouldn't get angry. I've always had some kind of easiness regarding schoolwork, like I never knew what it truly meant to make any effort. I just spent all my classes drawing on my books without any consequence. In junior year, my math teacher, who was seen by everyone as uptight but very caring, was pretty upset about this. He wanted me to work harder. I wasn't bad at math. I was around 13 or 14 out of 20. I'm French, but I assume this is like having a B or a B minus. But sometimes my grades would be very low. During a teacher-parent conference, he told my mom that I was limiting myself and that it was infuriating how lazy I was. My mom then replied that she agreed with him and that she wouldn't blame him for pushing me harder and for punishing me if it was for making me work harder. And from this day on, he did exactly what she told. In every math class, he would always question me first before everyone else, and was always sitting next to me when we were doing exercises. During the tests, he was always telling me, "You can do it, Elisa." It made me feel incredibly uncomfortable because at this age, no one wants to be the center of attention, especially unwanted attention. My classmates started to realize that my math teacher was a little obsessed with me and were teasing me a lot about this. The last class before Christmas break, our teacher threw a little surprise Christmas party. It was very nice. He gave us chocolates and mock champagne. We had a lot of fun. He poured me another glass of mock champagne, telling me that I deserved it because I was doing better. And it was true. Because of all that attention, I was forced to work, so my grades were around 15 to 16, which I think is like having an A minus. I accepted it, but didn't drink it entirely. I have diabetes and already had too much chocolate. But during the next class, I was feeling very bad. I almost fainted and finished my last day of school before Christmas in the nurse's office. I figured it was due to my diabetes and that I indeed did have too much chocolate, even though it didn't really feel like my usual crisis. A few weeks later, my class threw some kind of charity event. It was a class project and we were very proud. In my country, we don't have prom, so it was our occasion to wear pretty formal clothes and to dance together. The math teacher was invited and he was helping some of the boys to tend the bar. He served me an alcohol-free cocktail, but before I could drink it, a classmate of mine, Flora, poured some vodka in it, even though it was forbidden to bring alcohol at the event. I was mad because with my diabetes, I couldn't drink alcohol, so I told her she can just throw the cocktail. She might have just drank it instead. The event ended pretty badly because of the alcohol Flora had brought. Some guys were very drunk, they started breaking things, and Flora passed out because of all the alcohol she had. This ended the event. Flora had been admitted to the hospital because her coma was pretty severe, and we spent the next day being lectured by all the teachers of the school. Flora got expelled and never went again. I was upset with her since because of her, every event would now be forbidden and our project was a failure. We gave a very bad image to the association we were raising funds for, so I kind of ghosted her and never asked if she was doing better. Now I feel bad about this, but at that time I was immature. But because of that, I would never know if she was ill because of the alcohol or the cocktail that was poured for me. A few weeks later, I failed a math test. It had been a long time since I failed, and the teacher was angry. He yelled at me in front of everyone, saying how much of a disappointment I was, that I was hopeless, that I would just end up living in a cardboard box under a bridge. Something was off. I was feeling it. He had a weird look in his eyes. It chilled me and I couldn't help it and just started crying. He calmed down a bit and said he would just give me an hour of detention, during which I will copy my lesson. I was a little surprised because normally detention is for bad behavior, not for bad grades, but I was a little relieved because it was a small punishment and my parents would never know. Indeed, I lived kind of far from my high school, and there was only one bus every night between my high school and my home at 5 p.m. Because of that, even when I finished at 4 p.m., I would never go home before 5. And when I've had detention between 4 and 5 p.m., my parents would never know. But then, when he officially gave me detention, he said that he wanted to be personally present during my detention, and that the only possible hour was during 5 p.m. and 6 p.m. I was really nervous because I would have to tell my parents to come get me at 6 p.m., and then they would know everything. As I said earlier, I wasn't a troublemaker, so at first I planned to go, but during the day, my friends and I talked about it, and I was feeling more rebellious, so I decided not to tell my parents that I was in detention, and that one of my friends would pick me up at 6 and drive me home. At 5 p.m., when heading towards the detention room, I was angry, mumbling that it wasn't fair to be in detention because of one bad grade. When I arrived in front of the detention room, I realized I was the only one waiting. I then realized I would be the only student in there, alone with that math teacher who was a little obsessive, and it was getting dark out. It was a big note for me, and when I saw him coming, I panicked. I said something like, "Sorry, I have an emergency I have to go to now. I'll email the school for rescheduling my detention," and then I ran off. He started to yell at me that I had to obey him and go into the room, that he would call my parents. At this moment, I didn't care. I sprinted towards the bus stop and called the bus. I made it home, but I was afraid that he would have called my parents, so when I arrived, I was shaking, and my parents greeted me normally, so I assumed that eventually he didn't call them. He never came back the next day, nor the next weeks. Eventually, I learned that he quit his position. A shrink came during an hour to ask us if he wanted to talk about the math teacher, but as nobody knew what was going on with him, we didn't have much to say, and they left. We never heard of him again, until a few months ago. I became a teacher. How ironic given my laziness in school. And one day, chatting with my coworker, I mentioned his name, talking about my weird, bizarre math teacher, and how I skipped detention. One of my oldest coworkers went very pale hearing his name. In fact, a few days after this incident, my math teacher was arrested for having some bad things on his computer. And also to Flora, I'm sorry. Maybe you were expelled because of me.